who has served with such distinction to help facilitate our meetings, as we have appreciated in the past. They're very quietly, very much behind the scenes, running it all very smoothly, and we celebrate all that she has brought to us, and appreciate all that she's done to effectively serve our committee. So we can take a moment to appreciate and celebrate her. And we are now trying, 3 or 4 of us, to fill in her shoes and discover how challenging it can be.
I hope I can turn the sound off. Turn the volume down on this computer because it's taking away. That one.
Typically, the feedback's coming from a cell phone. Is your cell phone on?
No.
Is your cell phone on?
Now that one, that's been broadcasting. That one's not on. Testing. You say the day again? Appreciate it. All right.
Ready?
Showtime.
Okay. All right, here we go. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the November 28th quarterly meeting of the North Carolina Driver Education Advisory Committee. This is a legislative required committee as outlined in the North Carolina Driver Education Strategic Plan. I'm Dr. Cheryl Leonard, Chair of the Advisory Council, and I call this meeting to order. Welcome, committee members, those of you that are here today in true form, and those of you that are online. We thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here, particularly after the Thanksgiving holidays. We hope everyone had an enjoyable time, and now they're getting prepared and ready for the next row of holiday season. And so we have a lot of business to deal with today, and we'll go ahead and get started. So a huge welcome to everyone again, and please be reminded that this meeting shall comply with public meeting laws, including the use of Robert Rules for Administration. We'll also be recording this meeting as well. Our agenda and other materials are available online through the DPI website. That's www.dpi.nc.gov on the Driver's Education section page. The meeting is also audio streamed through a link located at the bottom of the Driver Education Advisory Council Committee page. Please be advised, again, that the meeting is being recorded. At this time, we'd like to welcome our new committee members. When your name is announced, please introduce yourself and share a few words. From the University of North Carolina Highway Research Center, Justin Owens.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Justin Owens. Hope you all can hear me. I am a behavioral research scientist at HSRC. I've been there for about 2 months now. My background is in human factors psychology, so I'm really looking forward to being a part of this. I've worked in vulnerable road user safety and team driver safety, as well as areas like nighttime visibility and pedestrian safety for about 20 years now. So thank you very much. Happy to chat with anybody at any time.
Great. Thank you so much, Justin. And you certainly have a varied background in order to assist us in many of the topics that we'll be discussing through our advisory committee. And the fact that you're from UNC, I will not mention that exciting game that just occurred not too long ago with my blood being red, in the event you all did figure that one out. Next, we have through the Department of Insurance, Marcia Kelly. Marcia.
Marcia Kelly, I'm the Director of Regional Affairs for the Department of Insurance, formerly a regional director. Traveled throughout the state in my territory. Now I'm actually at a statewide job, and we are excited to be here and excited to get to know everyone. And we have a current initiative for team drivers that we're trying to get out to driver's education classes and driver schools, private driver schools, to get the information out to team drivers about insurance, because most of them don't understand
Excellent, excellent. And I know Governor's Highway Safety works very close with the Department of Insurance and working with teen programs as well, and certainly anything we can help you do. We want to again be partners with that, and we welcome you to the advisory committee.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
And then Department of Public Instruction, Charter Schools, Dr. Brandy Gill.
Hi, how are you? My name is Dr. Brandy Gill. I just started with DPI, Office of Charter Schools, in July. Before that, I was in school leadership, and also worked with charter schools here in the Wake County area, and also a teacher with Wake County. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
Perfect. Dr. Gill, certainly you have a background that touches from the beginning to the end and all in the middle. So we thank you for being on this committee. This is going to be very interesting, I'm quite sure, and many topics that we'll be discussing here you'll be able to lend a lot of insight to because of your expertise. And thank you. Okay. Again, we welcome each one of you to this very important committee. Please be reminded that you represent one of the aforementioned stakeholder groups and are invited to share during appropriate points during this committee. The ethics statement I'd like to read now. Committee members are reminded that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this committee. Does any member of the committee know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? And I think as time proceeds, if you do find a conflict, please identify that. If so, please state them for the record. If during the course of the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. The purpose of the North Carolina Driver Education Advisory Committee shall be to advise and make recommendations to the State Board of Education through the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction on the implementation of the North Carolina Driver Education Strategic Plan and other issues related to driver education and traffic safety. Composed of experience and diverse perspectives, the Driver Education Advisory Committee provides research-based information and recommendations to the State Board of Education to implement and maintain the Driver Education Strategic Plan. The Advisory Committee advocates for certified professional teachers, highly quality instruction, and up-to-date curricula to prepare each student to be an informed and responsible driver. At this time, we'd like to do roll call, announce approval of the minutes and meeting minutes, and as well as approval of the agenda. By now, the members should have an opportunity to review the minutes and today's agenda. Is there any request for changes to the agenda or the minutes at this time? If not, the floor will entertain a motion to accept the minutes from the August meeting. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to accept.
Thank you. All right. And a second, Devin. And who was the motion
Paul.
made?
Paul.
Okay, thank you. The floor will entertain a motion to accept the agenda for today's meeting. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Okay. And do I have a second?
I'll second. Eddie Jordan.
Okay, Eddie. All right, DPI staff would like to call the roll and record the vote. Please.
Dr. Brandy Gill?
Here.
I'm sorry, I forgot the instructions.
Oh, let me,
If you agree to both, just say yes.
Yes.
Sherry Van Nelson?
Yes.
Kevin Harrison?
Yes.
Paul DeLuey?
Present.
Tanya Faulkner? Dr. Leonard?
yes.
Daniel Carter? Daniel's out. Marcia Kelly? Marcia.
Yes.
It's gonna be hard for me to change that now. It's in my mind. Marcia Kelly.
Just remember Marsha Brady.
Marcia.
Okay, that's in my head now. I won't forget that.
Bobby Dixon,
Yes.
Lieutenant Kenley, Russell, Devin Tanner,
Yes.
Asim McGill,
Yes.
Chad Aharon,
Present.
Eddie Jordan,
Yes.
Craig Ozell,
Yes.
Justin Owens,
Yes.
Kella Hatcher,
Yes.
Ebony Baker,
Present.
Wyatt Smith is wrong. Owen Dara, Mr. Chair, we have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right, and so the agenda and the minutes have all been approved, and would you like to do the roll call
I did.
as well?
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
same one, same one.
something? Okay, all right. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Carl Logan, who will provide a DPI update.
Good morning, and thank everyone for being here again. Today, I feel like that we're at somewhat of an inflection point in the history of driver education. Again, those of you who do not know, the Appropriations Act of 2023 had language in it which decreased the budget for the driver education program, the administrative budget for driver education. The language actually decreased the staff, which we're experiencing here already today, without Cindy Taylor and Dr. Amelia Royce Davis, the other two full-time members of the staff are no longer here. However, they do work in the building and other places. I am currently working in the position of the consultant for driver education. Also, the maximum number or maximum amount of money to be spent toward administration is $164,000. Could put it on the slide, couldn't I? Sorry about that. I'm multitasking here today. $164,000, which includes regular legislative salary increments, retirement, and adjustment to other health benefits of the person who was in the position of administering the program. What this can look like is that from 2022 and before, the program received $27,393,768. The administrative funds we used for driver education by our agency was $547,875. Last year, there was an increase of $2.8 million, as you see there, and then which increased also the 2% that driver education was using here at DPI of $603,000. This year, driver education total funds increased by $1.3 million, but you'll see where it's reflected that now DPI administration can only use $167,000 to administer the program, which results in the loss of staff to administer the program. So we're going to be faced with some challenges internally, but we will be moving forward as best we possibly can. There will be some adjustments, and how does that impact the districts immediately? It will impact the fact that our help desk is no longer there. Distribution of handbooks to the districts is somewhat delayed getting those out. We have 5 districts that are using our digitized program that was created a couple of years ago. We're looking at ways to fund that piece. The maintenance and the software and the updates was done internally using, accessing those internal funds. With the STEP program, our teacher certification program, there are currently 66 teachers that were to go to 31 districts. At this moment, we're not sure if they are going to be able to finish the fall cohort. The spring cohort and the summer cohort are on hold. Our projected number of teachers that we would certify annually was 200 teachers. Going forward, what does that look like? We are currently about 300 teachers short of having a full staff according to the districts. The projections are by the districts that we were to lose about 150 teachers per year over the next the next 2 years due to retirements. So without, and DMV, Paul, I think you're still on here. What can you project, or can you give us an idea of the number of teachers that DMV can certify in a year's time annually?
Well, to attending our 80-hour class, we've had full classes for the past 2 years, even through COVID. And annually, we're passing through the 80-hour class 78 to 200 brand new potential driver education instructors. We have licensed between those two numbers the past 2 years, so we're adding to that number. But as you just pointed out, Carl, we're probably bleeding out faster than we're adding to.
Thanks, Paul. And I know that you're not full staff there. Do you know, can you project the regularity on how often that you do have classes?
We tend to run them, most of the classes are running in all 7 districts from the June through July time period. We're also trying to move more to the first week of that 80-hour class being virtually done to help us be able to keep the school bus production up and be a little bit better with our resources. But we're going to continue to try to do 2 classes per district per year. But like I said, most of them are done during the summer because that's when our biggest demand is from DPI and the school system to have their instructors created at that point.
So acknowledging the fact that we have 2 programs in the state, we have the public school program and the commercial schools. What is the breakdown, or I'm asking you this answer you off the top of your head, is the number of teachers that you project in training for the commercial schools, or what percentage would you say would be commercial schools, and what percentage would you say would be for the public school program?
Typically, our numbers look about 60-40, 60% going back to the public school system and 40% going to the commercial school system.
And how many commercial schools do you have across the state?
Last count, 117.
Thanks, Paul. You have any other comments regarding teacher certification?
Well, you already know my situation as far as staffing and that. Yeah, we need more to do more, and we're already maxed out. I'm having a hard time keeping people, just like you are. So it's the ongoing battle.
Thanks, Paul. Moving further, and as you see, I do have to apologize. We have a high standard at DPS regarding the advisory committee. You've already seen this morning that we're struggling here to keep things moving forward as best we possibly can without disrupting the administration. So you're seeing this piece, and also the correspondence. I will be doing those meeting announcements, minutes. Thanks to Kevin Harrison for stepping up this morning and filling in for a normal Cindy Taylor. Lynn mentioned this a few minutes ago, and getting things posted on eBoard. I really appreciate them even more now that they're gone. But anyway, so we'll move forward and we'll do the best we possibly can. Does anyone have any questions regarding the administration or the Appropriations Act and how it will impact the program moving forward? Madam Chair, can we?
My question is, so the teachers who are in this DPI class, so they may not be able to finish it, they've only got a month left to go? I don't know if that's the.
That's a question I can't answer at the moment. I can't answer that. I will get back with you on that though.
Okay.
Anybody else? Anybody online?
I'm going to kind of, I'm jumping the gun over here, but I'm going to kind of start the subcommittee update only because I kind of want to piggyback on what Paul said. And Paul, we appreciate what you do. I mean, I got your DMV guys here working, for our CDL classes, and I got one guy hitting up Randolph County, Alamance County. I mean, they're all over the place. So we definitely know you're short-staffed, and we appreciate, what you guys all do there. But as Paul was saying, and we've always taken back in the day, the alternate route of using the DMV. And I've had drivers ed teachers here in Alamance County have to rent a condo or an Airbnb over in Union County because some of the classes fill up so quickly when we send the checks to Wendy House or so forth, which is kind of coming up with, we hear Paul struggling, but yet, the STEP program, which is a great program, which I personally put through 7 people through, and I myself did the STEP program as a lead instructor, mentor. I gather is on submission on hold. 2 of my future driver's ed teachers just came and emailed me and said they did get verification that we are putting the program on hold. And for a county, and I'm a Yankee, I'm from New York, but for a state that prides itself so much on being #1 in driver's ed, which I think it is. We have students from Alaska, Michigan, all over the place who come down here. Parents telling me how much better our driver's ed programs are run here. And to eliminate a program that is alleviating a lot of, stress from the DMV, that's quite a concern right there. So I know I kind of jumped the gun a little, Carl and Cheryl. I apologize for that. But I'm hearing Paul's already short-staffed, and I see it on the ground here in Alamance with our CDL and bus driver classes. And I just kind of am a little baffled because we pride ourselves on running a really good driver's ed program, which we do, but you can't build a house if you have no, lumber and tools and stuff like that. So just a little concerning of the driver's ed program. That's my spiel.
Thank you, Vice Chair Aharon. As I said before, I think this is a inflection point in the history. We faced a similar situation in 2015 when the funding for the program ended, and then it restarted again in December, I believe, or November of that particular year, 2015. And then we had a pandemic influence of the program in 2020. This is a program that's highly sensitive to outside influences. The number of students that we serve annually are, the balance of the districts, and help me out here, you folks at the table who run your local programs. You have just enough teachers to keep them a steady flow of students. But when something externally impacts the program, such as weather, pandemic, whatever it may be, something local, whatever it may be, it causes a ripple or a backlog of students that you can't work through very easily. And now that we've got a tremendous number of students who are still being worked through from the pandemic, then we will start to, and my projections are, is that we will start to increase the number of students who are waiting once we start losing more teachers. So I said all that to get to this. This committee, the primary job function is to advocate for the program, and also to advise DPI on how to implement the program according to the strategic plan. And this kind of gets ahead of us. I do have one more thing that I'd like to cover, but can we cover it in the subcommittee without objection to move forward? Paul, are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, stand by for just a second. We do have the rules and a strategic plan that we were moving forward to General Counsel. Those rules were drafted, or the changes were drafted to that assumed that there would be a staff here at DPI. That means that all the changes that we had going forward would need to be revisited. So all of those rules, the program administration, the teacher certification, as well as the contracting piece, it will need to go back through the subcommittees and rediscuss those and how we move forward from this point. Also, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think, Paul, you reminded me that there was a recent rule change at DMV. Can you go over that? Can you touch on that?
Certainly. Basically, when the Rules Review Commission went through our administrative code based on the information from DPI and the changes in DPI for driver's education, part of our administrative code under 19A 03I, subsection 0307, subparagraph B was completely eliminated. So by eliminating subparagraph 3, the oversight and curriculum requirements that DMV oversees in the commercial schools has been eliminated as far as DMV being the oversight. It has been transferred to 115C 215 and the requirements that fall under such. As you probably already know, that is DPI. So that took our commercial schools and the oversight of them out of our hands and put it to Carl, who just lost quite a bit of his staff and his funding to be able to do these things. Why they did it, I do not know. I think it's just to combine and to put it under one umbrella, but I don't think they saw the full effect of that. In addition to the effect of the staffing and the oversight, it also eliminated the DMV product, the SBTS 611 and the 611A, that it no longer exists anywhere in statute or in admin code as a document to be used to produce to and take to the DMV showing that a student has completed the 30 hours in 6. So that's it in a synopsis.
What are the private schools, when they take through the commercial school and they're not contracted with a public school, what kind of certificate will they get? If you're not gonna have 611 and 611, was it 611A and 611?
Well, according to statute and admin code, the document no longer exists. However, we're still producing it because that is an accepted document that is received at the DMV. But it's something, in my opinion, this is Paul speaking, the former manager of school bus and traffic safety, that something needs to be introduced either in legislation, an MOA, an MOU, or back into administrative code so that DMV is given the oversight of the commercial schools, whether they be working within the school systems or outside as a private entity, to continue to be oversight authority and have those documents be able to be continued produced and provided.
So as of now, like DMV does quarterly inspections, so they're no longer have to do that, or they're not authorized to do that anymore? Or I think they have to do it at least once a year, but they can do it as many times as they want to come to the driving schools and do inspections. So are they supposed to do that now? So I'm a little confused.
Yeah, by removing 307, it removed the curriculum requirements, it removed the additional subjects, it removed the 611, as I mentioned. Now, under a different part of 19, the administrative code, it does address the inspections on a minimum of an annual basis of the classrooms, of the vehicles, as such. But as far as the curriculum, that was taken out.
So inspections are still the same, it's just the actual certificates, I guess, is one of the biggest changes.
Well, the inspections did change because now the way that by the removal of subparagraph 3, they've taken out where we walk in and say, okay, so what is your curriculum? What are you providing? What are you teaching these kids outside of the 30 and the 6? Okay, we no longer have that authority, but we do have the authority as far as to inspect the classrooms and the vehicles.
Right. Well, and I'm just curious, why, like in our county, why are they shutting it down, or why have they, like with DPI, why are they getting rid of some of it, or with like Cynthia, or why, are they losing money, say they've lost money that they're giving to fund this?
We actually were somewhat blindsided by this back in March on how this came about. We knew nothing about this. Our agency has advocated for the program with the General Assembly, although obviously were not successful. We were told to advise people they need to contact their General Assembly member on this. Obviously, we were at a point where we were about to move forward. We had created our own teacher certification program. We had a digitized program that was ready to go to distribute to all the districts, standardizing the curriculum. We would be able to measure. We would be able to have a mastery as opposed to 30 hours being the requirement for driver education. We would be able to create a system where we knew what the students had a mastery of the program, obviously. There was discussions with DMV to move forward with the possibility of us administering the test at the DMV. And so we were at a great position to continue moving forward. But we don't know why this came about at all. But the key point here is that without staff, now we've also inherited the fact that we could possibly inherit 117 private driving schools to provide some level of oversight. And I've discussed this with General Counsel that we will get with them and first, and then we'll get back to DMV, Paul. We'll discuss this and determine what exactly does this look like for us going forward. And then we will discuss the parts where the two agencies may collaborate and work on solutions to the issues. The ones that I see immediately are if we have to create new certificates, then that's an expense that's not included in the $164,000 that was that's in the budget bill. The budget bill does not. It also does not have enough room for the printing of driver eligibility certificates, which is required by statute to be printed using driver education funds, and also, like as I said before, the distribution of the handbooks. So there's other expenses that, not sure that were taken into consideration when the figure was created. So, yes.
Just one question, just can you confirm that the funds that were cut, they were not put somewhere else that has anything to do with the tasks that you all were doing, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's not that they got moved and somebody else is supposed to do that with them, okay, just making sure.
Yeah, so as I said before, the program actually got a 1.3 or $1.5 million increase this year, but also the 400,000 that DPI was cut for administrative moved toward the districts. And so the districts do not have that capability of absorbing any of those. Although we've been asked by many districts, could they take on could there be some type of partnership or contract to facilitate the STEP program, continue the teacher education program going forward? And that's a question that obviously we have to move that forward to see how that would work. But we can't do it out of administrative funds, so it has to be local. What's not been said here also is we can't forget the non-public students, non-public education, and also charter schools. This year we are just over 130,000 PSU students, and Dr. Gill, pardon me, because I know that charter schools are public schools, but how do you say charter schools? Charter schools, I think, represent about 6,000 additional students, and I think the private schools are additional 2,000. I may have that backward, just off the top of my head. But what would this look like? What will happen to those students as we continue to move forward? So we've got a number of moving parts here that we're still required by statute to serve, but at the same time, we have no staff at DPI to do that with.
So who's in charge of driver's ed now? DPI, DMV, because they've turned it up. It's really confusing now.
DPI is still responsible for the program, the state superintendent and the state board of education. But as you saw with DMV, with the recent rule change, DMV now also hands over a portion of the oversight of the 117. And actually, I guess we have 10 of those, and we're looking at 100 and whatever the math is, 107 commercial schools to provide some type of oversight with or collaborate with DMV on.
Because even with the certificates, as with the public schools, I mean, they print our certificates. We don't get them from DPI. We got, if I need extra copies, I call our print department and they'll make it, the copies that I need.
Right.
So like, I guess nobody knows, like, where will the private schools get theirs? Will the DPI local agency have to give it to private schools now?
As Paul mentioned, there will need to be a discussion for our two agencies to discuss how we will move forward on that. Will we adopt the current 611 and 611As, or will we go with one certificate and it will have some type of modification on it to show that it was a commercial school and not part of the contract? Or does it even matter? Does it matter where the student?
But I was talking to somebody yesterday, and a private certificate does not require the state number and the school number. On the public school certificates, we're allowed to, we put down the school code, which one of my schools is 960-380. But on the private one, they do not allow, you don't have to. Why do we even have to put that on the public school certificate and not on the private school certificate? I thought maybe it was a way DMV kept up with the schools as far as with the STEP program and getting their license. And maybe that's a question for another day.
It is a good question, and that is something that would be included in the conversation that we have between DMV and DPI. At one time, there was a tracking or numbers that would be used in the driver license system. And, Paul, did I hear, Tanya's not on, is she?
I didn't see her name.
Yes, I'm here.
Ms. Faulkner.
I couldn't get to my mute button fast enough earlier during roll call. My apologies.
So you were late for class.
Please excuse me.
So Ms. Faulkner, as we continue moving forward with the conversations regarding the changes that this has brought about, when we discuss this, I know that at one time, the driver ed certificate number went into the driver license system. I'm not so sure that still happens, and that's something that we don't have to discuss now, but I know that if going forward, does that help any at all or not? I don't know. You can make any comments you'd like.
And just, yes, it is still placed in the system, but we do, like the gentleman said, for us, the private, we actually sometimes have to call the private school to ask for that code. And if one is not listed on our ever-ending list, we place a generic code in it. So that's a good discussion to have. What's the relevance of it? And going forward, should we use it? Because we are looking at our system processes now regarding our internal systems, just FYI.
Thank you, Ms. Faulkner. Kind of overstepped my bounds by asking, are there any other questions regarding this legislative change?
I don't think there's any questions, but it's very conflicting. And I'm going to play the voter card. We get an increase in driver's ed, which was warranted. We don't mention homeschoolers. I mean, we drive a lot of homeschoolers here in Alamance, along with many of you as well, and I don't believe we get funded for those homeschoolers. Correct me if I'm wrong. So the increase in funding is warranted. We need new cars, rotation more often, and that's a good thing because then we can hire more people with that increase of funding. But then on the other hand, when you cut this program like the STEP program and the DMV being so short-staffed, it don't matter how much money they give us. I mean, you're going to be turning money back to the state if you don't drive roughly 90 to 100% of your students. And you can't drive 90 to 100% of your students if you don't have the staff to do it. So it doesn't correlate very well.
What was the purpose of cutting this? I mean, does anybody know?
Again,
Nobody knows.
we were blindsided by this back in March. Didn't know where the source was, no discussion.
Because to me, it wouldn't be funded. I know our county, they turn money back in every year back, so to me, it would be lack of funding, I'm just curious,
Just to continue that conversation, once we got through this piece, that was the next piece on the agenda for our administrative staff, was to look at ways to update the allotment policy. The allotment policy has been in place for 30 years, and it does not work for everyone. The program is a very fluid program. There are situations where in-house programs work best. There are situations where districts need to contract a vendor, get with a vendor. There are those that can use a combination of the two. Classroom, in-house program, contract out the behind-the-wheel piece. There are areas where, in Devin's case, where he's got 15,000 students, and I think your allotment this year is a little close to $4 million. And then there are some districts that may get 50,000. And obviously you can't buy a car with $50,000 and also have a teacher on staff. So how would it best be to administer such? That's where a contractor would come in. A contractor would work several counties and draw those together. The districts can already join together and pool their resources, lack of better phrasing there, to to administer all their programs to combine and share teachers. They can already do that, but in most cases where districts are short-staffed as everyone else is, that how do they facilitate that? Who would initiate that conversation? So that was the guidance that we were planning on providing for them. Again, we don't know how this got started.
It's very concerning.
Again,
I was going to say, Carl, this is Devin Tanner. I represent the North Carolina Driver Traffic Safety Education Association for this committee, but I'm also the Senior Director for Driver's Ed here in Wake County. We do get a large amount of money for a large amount of students, and as Carl said earlier, you know, we have a backlog in Wake County. Many of the big districts do. And one of the reasons is we're never really able to fully recover our teachers. We have about 63 or 65 drive instructors in Wake County, which seems like a lot, but we're used to operating with 85 to 90 to keep up. So having said that, my county is one of those counties that does send back, or has been sending back the last couple of years, quite a bit of money. And the problem with that, and Carl and I have had lengthy discussions about that, you know, there is no mechanism for me to send money to another LEA through DPI, like with Help Buying Cars or something like that. All I can do is sit on that money that I'm not using because we're not driving as many kids, and then it gets sent back. And I think that's one of the reasons why, you know, the allocation, the way that we allocate money, Carl, I didn't know it was 30 years old, but that's definitely something we need to look at.
Thank you, Devin. As I said, we were kind of blindsided by this. We had a systematic process that we were going to handle these, and obviously the low-hanging fruit would move those things forward, get the program in a position where it could operate, and then our staff was to focus on those particular areas, which we brought back here to the advisory committee for you all to take a look at and provide any feedback or whatever as we move forward with that. So that will need to be included in the strategic plan. So that's one reason, as I was telling Dr. Leonard here, we've kind of gotten all the agenda has all now kind of gotten all together in one piece. But appreciate, hopefully everybody's able to keep up with the discussion. Yes.
I promise you,
No.
try not to say too much.
No, you're actually saying what everybody thinks.
What is are you the only staff of DPI now?
Yes.
I mean, are you not? I mean, what does the staff consist of, DPI with Driver's Ed?
I am the staff.
You are the staff.
I'm the budget bill allowed any additional staff as necessary. And right now I'm necessary.
And I would add, he is the highly committed,
Oh, yeah.
equally qualified
Absolutely.
staff. He's working diligently to continue to keep this process and this momentum moving in the time of uncertainty. Thank you very much for doing that, Carl. It's not been easy.
With your
And so
leadership.
your comments are greatly appreciated to help us identify what some of those next steps may need to be. I think that's one of the positive aspects of today's meeting, is because each of you are such important stakeholders. You represent agencies who are critical to the opportunities for our students to learn how to be effective drivers, how to implement and live traffic safety every day. And we all know how critically important that is. One need turn on the news channels or look at the newspaper every day to realize that teen fatalities are at the point that's just unacceptable. We want to continue to do what we can. So this conversation as a launch pad to future opportunities to identify solutions, I think is critical. And I certainly encourage you to continue to articulate, as you've done very well, what your concerns are, so that we might find a forum to address those as proactively as we can, certainly, and as effectively as we can. This is at the core of the purpose of this very important legislatively mandated committee. And I think to seize that purpose, I'll go back to the purpose, which is the North Carolina Driver Education Advisory Committee shall be to advise and make recommendations to the State Board of Education through the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction on the implementation of the Driver Education Strategic Plan and other issues related to driver education and traffic safety. So we might consider this the proverbial bump in the road, or the veering off the road, whatever it could be. But I think it's a tremendous opportunity for us to look at solutions and perhaps make those recommendations. I might even suggest that as each of you return to your respective organizations, talk with them about the impact. Come back to perhaps a future meeting with input from those you represent at this table. And we could look at potential recommendations. Again, looking for solutions. How can we get the vehicle back on the road? How can we get this very important program? And Chad, thank you for acknowledging that it's perhaps one of the best in the country. We've always had that strong reputation. And perhaps work in a work session prior to the next meeting or during the next meeting, whatever the appropriate methodology is, to look at solutions, to bring all the players together, all the stakeholders together, to look at what might be as we move forward. While certainly still asking those questions as you've been asking, what may have created this? Ask our policymakers what their vision might be as we go forward. The other thing I think is so imperative to what we do, and that is that we keep children and students first. They have to be the center of our decision making. What must we continue to do to make their health, well-being, and safety now when they're learning and in the future as drivers? How do we keep that at the forefront of what we're doing and what we're talking about, so as to, at the end, have that high-quality driver education program with a standardized curriculum that enables us to have the flexibility we need to reflect new trends in data that are telling us what we need to do, that has the consistency across the state that we know is imperative, that has the flexibility for parents and educators to deliver that just-in-time opportunity so that we can do away with these extended waits that we hear about. And last but certainly not least, to have the accountability. We all want our public education, our public programs to have, especially new programs funded with our taxpayer dollars. Looking at that as the core of our work. I think that the experiences, the expertise around this table, we can make those kinds of recommendations to the department and the state board.
Yeah.
Question, so since technically this, this body makes recommendations to the state board, have you all yet had time on the state board committee's agenda or the state board itself to speak about anything happening here?
I think we really wanted to have the opportunity, you're our frontline stakeholders, to have the opportunity to convene today to discuss what's transpired, to look at how we want to continue to sustain as best we're able to sustain with the resources we have, and take your guidance as this legislatively appointed body for our next steps, looking for solutions as to how we go about achieving those goals.
And let me add this if I can, and I would certainly reflect all your comments in what this body needs to do. So as we move and leave here today, we need to identify some actions and to identify, we have discussion, we've had some discussion, we need further discussion to talk about some logistical things that we need to do. We are certainly at an impasse of some very seriousness about where the future lies, not only with this group, but with the whole program in itself. And what we're facing now, not only for teen drivers, but for every road user on the highway, everybody in this room, it's going to affect some form or fashion. And so from what we like to do and what we've talked about is maybe one, you mentioned working groups, and we've got a couple of subcommittees that we can pull, and I know Chad's been working with the subcommittees, that we can pull them individually and look at maybe maybe revisiting our strategic plan and see where we're at with that and how what's happening now is going to affect that. But two, what we'd like to do at the end of the day is have a position statement, if you will, so that we can present to the State Board of Education. And their next meeting is
They meet monthly, so getting on their calendar actually
Is
is a
challenging.
2-month process. It's a 2-month
Yeah.
process.
And of course, we'd want to take those, in accordance with the purpose, we'd want to take those recommendations through the department and then from the department to the State Board of Education.
So even if we're projecting maybe by May, that would give us, do you think that would give us too long of a time? Because clearly we need to pull together stuff to bring to you and the department, and then getting on their agenda. But I don't want to wait too long, because we've got so much that's going to depend on this. Yes.
If one of the potential recommendations is to recommend reinstatement of funds, then you have to think about the legislative timeline and when things get going over there and budget process at DPI and all that. And so just flagging that, it may already even be too late. Obviously, it's a short session year, et cetera. But if that's a potential recommendation, that's always something to keep in mind, is just the whole timeline issue.
Yeah.
So we could look more closely at what the timeline might look like.
We can, but I think even looking at that, we're almost working parallel with each other, with these subcommittee groups, to identify their lively discussion and identifying some key points, and then we can look parallel to that with these dates. I just think that we need some kind of 1, 2, 3 to be able to present sooner than later. So if we were to meet the 1st of January and start digging deep and coming up with a position statement so that we'll be ready for that.
I mean, yeah, I agree. We need to be proactive rather than reactive. And I'll go back again with that STEP program. Carl, how many people are right now in the program that were, there currently, I'm assuming, was people in the program or no?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Were there people currently in the STEP program that were told that the program is no longer going on?
We have not advised the people that are in the program at the moment. However, that pause is about to be announced.
How many people do we have in there roughly? Future drivers, ed teachers.
We were looking at for other alternatives to keep the program going because they were so close to the end, and there were so many districts that are going to be impacted by the fact that they were not going to receive a teacher, which is 31 districts. The 66 people who somewhat have not somewhat, but put a significant amount of time investment into becoming a licensed driver ed teacher. We wanted to give it every opportunity we could to move it forward and get them to a point where they were doing their practice teaching or the practicums at the local level where there is no cost to DPI to do that. So that's what we were hoping to race toward. And that is actually around the 20th of December, unfortunately. So
yeah.
So this is, we're at a critical point, to say the least, that how do we continue doing this and reach that. Also, if everything was fixed today, if the staff was restored and everything was fixed today, the spring cohort, because of the number of things that have to happen locally first, the spring cohort is already a no-go. So we would be looking at trying to save the summer cohort, which was supposed to start in March. That's what we would be working on now. So you can see that the timing of us moving forward is beyond critical, to to the point where,
That's why I was trying to bring that up, because the longer we wait, the more of a backlog. I mean, we're already backlogged, and if we, look at these districts and whatnot, like for when I had those 5 people in the STEP program, I knew they were going to complete it. I knew they were going to do the practicum with me. I mean, that alleviated us tremendously. If those 5 people were told last minute they couldn't do it, I mean, I already scheduled classes, 2-3 months ahead of time. We would have had to cancel classes and so forth. So I think the quicker we get on this and, try to be proactive rather than reactive, because what we don't want to have it happen again, and this is going to cause a problem for the DMV, is a big backlog again. I mean, I know they went recently from 6 months to, or starting January, 6 months to 9 months again. But if we cause this big backlog, there's going to have to be some form of how long do they hold their permit for versus license and so forth. So just kind of worries me quite a bit.
Yes, sir.
What is the cost of running the program, the STEP program? Is it an expensive cost? Should we start charging people now instead of doing it free to keep? Because that's a great program. I know you had said they may contract that out. I know DMV, when you go take that 2-week class, I think it's $250 to take that.
Something like that.
And I know the DPI, which I'm pretty conservative and tight, I like the free part, but that if you have to charge, you keep that program. And it's going to be hard to tell these people who've been in that class every Tuesday meeting,
right.
and they've done a lot of work. My wife's one of them, but hey, you're not going to be able to complete this program.
we saw that the opportunity for us to decrease costs using our administrative funds was one of our primary purposes in operating this program that way. It was something that we had taken for granted that the
Right.
staff would always be
Right,
here.
right.
So it wasn't something that we were planning to do. Moving forward, obviously, we can't leave any stone unturned to be able to see how we can continue moving this forward. Because without teachers, this program, as we know it today, can't be sustained. It can't be sustained. And me working at the national level, and I've worked with the national standards, or the ANSTE, Association of National Stakeholders in Traffic Safety Education, we produce the national standards. There are a number of commercial driving schools. Let me back up. There are a number of virtual programs that are out there that have been created, especially in the last few years, that are, I hate to say this, they're waiting for an opportunity such as this. And I worked for one of those at one time, and the standards would be a challenge for us to make those work. What my biggest concern is the knee-jerk reaction, because the standards are so high now, that they would lower the standards, and then what does that look like on the collisions and fatalities of students or teens in this age group? And what impact will that be on the fatalities and crashes among everybody? I know that those of you who were here on the last meeting, Daniel Carter gave a presentation, and he gave us some statistics where it had overlaps concerning the number of students who were involved in crashes, or students who were in the crashes by themselves, and what impacts those were in other categories within the Highway Strategic Plan. So this has a kind of a ripple effect. The more we dig into it, the more things that it impacts. So, but the idea of moving this forward as quickly as possible, getting a recommendation to the state superintendent who's responsible for administering the program, and then on to the State Board of Education is critical. But at the same time, we've got the situation where the legislatures, this is a short session coming up.
Do we know what date that is?
April,
April.
toward the end of April,
Okay.
I think.
Well, I know the holidays are coming up, but I think like Chad said, we probably need to do this sooner than later. So maybe there's a possibility in December, mid-December, that we can have a working group come up with some suggestions. And I think if we just had one working group that had an array of individuals that were part of the different subcommittees and just sat down, reviewed some discussion, and if anybody else has any comments, they can certainly send it to Carl or myself.
Ms. Hatcher, if we could use your experience working with the legislature, what would you recommend as far as the number of things that this decrease in funding for DPI, is it important to have the details on how many things it impacts, or is it, would be spelled out?
So if you're asking if somebody at some point were to, be in a position to educate folks on the impact, including legislators, yes, you want detail, but you don't want overwhelming detail. And to Dr. Harvey's point about focusing on the impact on kids and safety, I think that's, if you had a list of 30 details, pick
Right.
10 of them that
Right.
really impact
Right.
the safety and, of everybody on the highways. And those are really important things to focus on. And also, I think just the pragmatic, if you take funds away from something that was handling a critical aspect of a program that we already have in place and that is expected to go forward, and you don't put them elsewhere, just being able to connect all those dots and being able to say, here's what happens, and just the types of things that are being talked about today. The facts are the facts, but the level of detail, that's a fair question, because there's a lot here. But you may have to pick and choose depending on how many bullet
Right.
points you have.
I hate to put you on the spot with this one, but what would you think would be the most effective moving a legislator from their position?
I kind of depends on what the intent was behind the change to begin with, I would say. But even if you push that aside, just being able to educate about the impact, approaches and intents and, trade-offs take place that you never really know about.
Right.
So even if you don't ever get to the bottom of the intent, sometimes there's less of an intent as it is just moving money around, I think. Who
Right.
knows,
Right.
right?
Right.
But even if you never get to the bottom of that, being able to demonstrate the impact, I think, is pretty critical.
And I would also add, as we identify those impacts, having the key representatives here, the agencies, i.e. even the Child Fatality Task Force, having that support and encouragement and telling those bodies how important it is to each one of our groups. That, to me, once they see all of that, and not only the impact it's making to kids and everybody that's on the highway, but how it's impacting each one of our agencies, because it will impact each one of our agencies. I know our agency particularly works very closely with DPI in doing the things that they do. And as we do that triangle with DMV and DPI and our agency, and it will impact us, and it will impact DMV. So to me, I think when those folks that are making these decisions to do away with, for whatever reason, and we may never know what that reason is, but somebody needs to look at how it's going to impact all of these agencies, not just DPI, not just this program.
Can I ask a quick question? This is just because of my ignorance being new. Was the defunding of this program part of the budget bill that came out, or where was the defunding? What was the defunding part of?
I'll defer.
It was the, was the budget bill,
Okay.
the Appropriations Act of 2023.
And it wasn't part of any other standalone bill?
No.
Okay.
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah. But the other thing I would say is just to keep in mind that anybody who has like a policy agenda, groups that are allowed and able to have a policy agenda, which not every group is, obviously. You know, there is a very specific formal process typically for developing that policy agenda and then what happens with that policy agenda, et cetera. So, you know, us, for example, I mean, we have to go, every issue has to go through our committees and then to our full task force and then only makes it onto our policy agenda if there's formality and, you know, the planning starts with what the issues are gonna be long ahead. So just to keep that in mind, but because you all already have this, that your purpose is to go through the State Board of Education, and they certainly have a role with recommending budget-related things.
Right.
That, to me, is your most direct. If they identify these things as a priority, you know, then, because that is how this committee is set up, is to go through them.
Right.
Ms. Astor, I have a question for you. The North Carolina Driver Traffic Safety Education Association, I know that's a mouthful, but we had a meeting recently and voted unanimously to write a letter in support of restoration of the funding for DPI's administration. Where we struggle is where do we send that where it's going to be, I guess, effective? I mean, we just don't know whose hands to get it into, so.
Do you all have people at your association who regularly deal with the legislature?
We do have a lobbyist, yes.
Yeah, and that's who you would need to work through, yeah,
Understood.
I would assume.
Okay, so why don't we do this, based on the comments that have just clearly been made, we go ahead and establish a working group, come up with whatever comments that we need to bring forth to Dr. Harvey's group and Carl, and then we'll move forward based on what your recommendations are.
I think the robust conversation about the issues and the potential impact have been very helpful today. Thank you, everyone, for sharing authentically about what your questions and concerns are. And again, for keeping our student drivers at the center of our decision-making, whatever that recommendation might look like. And it may be something that's a brand new focus on how the program moves forward. I think the sky's the limit for us to look at possibilities.
And I guess what we could do is we could entertain a motion for a position paper to identify some of the comments that were made here today and any others that might come through. That may save us some time to pull together something, and then we can do edits and comments by way of email. Would that work better for you? Hello?
I'm sorry, I was in deep thought here. I'm thinking of obviously the administration of how we can move this forward, but also the timeline. Ms. Hatcher, I realize that you told me, I think you were on 11 advisory committees.
I'm sorry.
I think you're on a number of advisory
yeah.
committees. I'm sure you would allow us to have you as a resource on helping to drive this forward, pardon the pun. But we'll move it as we move forward. The thing, well, I think, but first of all, there are 115 school districts. We want to make sure that they all are aware of this going forward, which there are a number that I talk to on a daily basis, and there are some that I never talk to that are just operating their programs. I think that those districts and those superintendents those local boards of education, we need to ensure that they are aware of what's happening and what potentially could happen. And what does that mean for them going forward? At the same time, we want to make sure that the door is open for them all to ensure that their issues, their potential issues are brought forth. But in your comment, in condensing those items to the smaller chunks to where we can get that message across to the through the state superintendent and the local board of state board of education, and then on to the legislature, what would that look like on the other end? And that's got to be done in a very fast manner, sooner than later. Also, I hate to look at it this way, but we have kind of an hourglass that's running, and it's continuously. We cannot stop the number of students who turn 14 and a half every year. My biggest fear is what will happen to this program if we obtain a backlog that's insurmountable. What would be the knee-jerk reaction? And I think I know what that would be. And we can't decrease the regulations or standards for our highways. The other part of this is that there's 50% of our districts do not have a commercial driving school. Excuse me, 50% of our counties do not have a driving school. So there's no alternative for the students who attend schools or who live in those counties. What does that do to the economy in those areas? And that won't be felt until a couple of years have passed by, and you can't fix that. During the pandemic, we were asked to increase the number of classroom opportunities because they had noticed that the number of potential workers by the Chamber of Commerce obviously reached out to us, the Department of Labor, asked about, can you increase the number of opportunities for students? And we had done as best we could, but we could not, without the digitized program, we couldn't do that. Because we didn't have the facilities, and there were a number of other things that were flowing along there. But anyway, getting back to your point, if we could have I'm assuming this is going to be in the form of a motion, that we'll have a meeting, I don't know if it needs one, a meeting of the subcommittee to discuss things, how do we move this forward, and what the timelines could need to look like in order to get it to the State Board of Education, to the superintendent and the State Board of Education, and on over to the General Assembly.
I'm not sure we need a motion for a working group, but we would need a motion, I think, for a statement.
A position statement.
Position statement to go.
Once we compile the list of things that we need to ensure that they know.
Mm-hmm. Or even if they're just questions like you just asked, a list of questions. So now what are we going to do? What do you plan to do? But and correct me if I'm wrong, the State Board of Education, they were not aware. They were equally as surprised.
Shortly after this came about, they were informed as to the potential of what was happening.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't make any major decisions to move forward with this outcome.
That would have been my observation. And I think we have to be aware of the possibility that what may emerge from our working efforts may be something that's different than what we see now. We're just not certain. I think this is where this experience and your firsthand knowledge of how this transition can impact students will be helpful in helping us look for what that new opportunity and new model could look like, could be like, and be most effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I would encourage you to think broadly about what a sustainable possibility could be. And perhaps offer, I apologize, I'm sorry, and perhaps offer multiple recommendations to the department and the board to give them options to look at how any one option might be more feasible, affordable than another.
Yeah, I agree that, you know, having more than one option or more than one potential path and comparing the two is smart. I also think that, although I had said before, focus on the outcomes of safety to children and people on the road, that whole backlog issue is huge. And policymakers get lots of calls about that, et cetera. To the extent that this impacts backlog, you know, that's a big deal. I mean, we all know how, you know, those of us who've shepherded kids through the program and had to go through each step, and even if we're in favor of all the safety steps, you gotta work through the process. And when people get frustrated by that process, lots of people hear about it.
Right.
So.
I.e. the 6 month
That's
versus
right.
the year.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. We had just, we had actually a 9.8% increase in the number of students that we served last year. However, there were a lot of districts that are still serving the older students first, which you can never catch up with. So that we hopefully, that we would be able to address some of those, those issues as we move forward. But anyway, that's kind of going back and rehashing the same things. I'm glad that I recorded this because the note taking, I realized how important it is. At any rate, as far as the program administration subcommittee, I don't have that list in front of me, but I could contact everybody or anybody else who was available. Say 2 weeks from now, that would take us about that long to do a virtual meeting.
Yeah.
To get together, at least the initial group to get together on what it is that we want to do. And then the pathway of moving that forward and then start working on the details.
And we can do some kind of poll to see what date fits everybody's schedule, at least the majority of everybody's schedule before the holidays start. Because we won't have another meeting for another
February.
number of months before we do this, do you want to go ahead and get a motion on the table for a position statement so that we can move and we won't be pulled back? Anybody, could I get a motion for a position statement to be developed coming out of this working group?
Hi, this is Ebony Baker, and I make a motion that we create a statement coming out of this working group.
Okay, thank you. And Craig seconds it. All right. Although in agreement? No nays? Perfect. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so.
May I add, I
Yes,
wanted to just
please.
reiterate, I think this gives a great opportunity for each of our members to return to their respective groups, those you represent around this table, to have those discussions about how this transition can impact our young drivers, and equally, how we might want to move forward with a sustainable model that supports all the priorities we've discussed here today. So getting that feedback from those we represent, I think is so important to the integrity of that process as well. There are so many stakeholders in traffic safety, so many. So we want to hear voices from as many as we possibly can, I would believe. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you for that comment. And just to reiterate, feel free to make your statements. Send us an email. Let us know where your agency is on this topic. This is a serious point in what's happening to driver's education and our crashes as I won't say increase, because some of our crashes are decreasing, but the validity and the volatility of these crashes are horrific. Not just teen crashes, but just last year in 2022, we had close to 1,800 crashes alone collectively. 471 of those were alcohol-related crashes, and the remaining, of course, were crashes that occurred by every known entity that you can think of that would precipitate a crash. I think this is important to note because we want those numbers to go down. Those numbers have escalated year after year, and we have to figure out what driving behavior is occurring that continues this pattern. And we all are part of that mission to discover that. I would add as an extra before we close, the Tree of Life event that we hold every year, the first Friday of December, every year for the last 20-some years, is an event where we recognize all those that have been killed in crashes, all those that have been killed in alcohol-related crashes. This is a ceremony that is partnered with Governor's Highway Safety and Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, and we have a candlelight vigil that will be at the Capitol grounds from 6 o'clock to typically it runs to about 6:30. It's a ceremony, rain or shine. We do keep hearing that there may be some rain in the forecast Friday. If that is the case, we'll be crossing the street into the highway building, into the auditorium. So we will have the event, rain or shine. Just kind of keep your eyes out because we'll be doing social media posts and et cetera to let people know what's going on. Again, we invite everyone across the state, whether it's inside or outside. If you have an opportunity to be there, we welcome your attendance, and anyone else that might have been involved in a crash or families that have been involved in a crash, we welcome them to come and participate as well. We know that all of these ceremonies, all the work that committees like this are doing, all make an impact on our resolve to make our roads safer and certainly our Vision Zero mission statement as well. So we thank you. We know the holidays are even much harder. People are not making good choices, unfortunately. So we have a responsibility within all of our agencies to help promote that educational piece and let people understand and know how important it is to make smart decisions. Don't drink and drive, don't text, wear your seatbelt, etc. And I could go on. So with that said, thank you all committee members here today, those who are online, and the staff, Carl, Dr. Harvey, for all your lively discussions, all your input, all the things that are going to make our program even better as we move forward. Our next meeting will be in February. I don't have that date right now, do you? It's usually the
How about that?
February
20th.
20th, okay. February 20th. And the meeting will be from 10 to 12, and again, it'll be here in the boardroom. So we've completed our agenda for today. Unless there's any additional business at this time, anybody have any comments? Okay, if not, I'll ask a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, sir. And anyone like to second that?
Second.
Thank you. And motion passed and majority.
There you go.
Everyone have a safe holiday season, and we look forward to seeing you in February. Thank you.
Carl?
Thanks very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Carl?
Yes. Can you hear me? Yes.
Carl, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can can hear you.
I think you need to unmute your computer or something.
Can you hear? This is Carl.
This is Carl.